Alright, so here we are today with an investigation into heirloom relics, and specifically my heirloom relic, the Tactician Sword. This will be mostly looking at heirloom relics and like what they are and how they work, but we're also going to look pretty deeply into just relics in general. I might make specific videos about specific relics, but I just really don't have the content to give about any one relic yet. I have lots of relations to relics in the past, but I don't have much like photos or videos about any of that. So this will be about photos and videos that I do have, specifically about heirloom relics. So in general, before we look into heirloom relics as a subclass, we must look at the superclass of just regular old relics. Well, they're not really regular, they're very special actually. They are special weapons, tools, or items that are made by the camp and have special powers. So here's a big old pile of just regular relics that are all leaned up next to a big old truck. I assume this is either at the start or end of a year when all of the relics from all of the bands have been combined into one pile before they're split apart, either for next summer or to like go into storage or just to come out of storage. But here's the total sum pile of most of the relics. I think there are a couple here missing, but this is very close to all. It's as large a pile as I've ever seen. But essentially what relics are they are, again, special weapons, tools, or items made by the camp that have special powers. And when I say made by the camp, I mean made in this style. So you can see how kind of all of these weapons, they look very, very similar, and it's because they're all made in the same way. It is a plastic or undersheath covered in paper mache and then with a layer of liquid polyurethane. So they are very close to waterproof, or they're water resistant, so that they can last for really long times after being hidden out in the forest. We've actually lost a couple of relics like in the forest in years prior, and then like they'll turn up a couple years later when some camper goes and finds them, and they'll still be in pretty good shape. We'll like dust them off, maybe put another coat of paper mache on, and they'll be perfectly fine to use again. And they all have different special powers. I'll get into some of those later, but they are somewhat game-altering powers that will drastically, wow, I messed up that word, will massively help the fighting ability of the team in some way. It could either be by literally helping your team by giving something good, like this life chalice here, decreases your respawn by either a minute or 30 seconds, depending on the band, or it could do something that would really annoy the enemy, like this anvil over here. If you tag an enemy player on their sword or shield or whatever with the anvil, you get to set it on their foot. They don't die, but unless 6 other of their clan members come and help lift the anvil off their toe, they're stuck there, I think for like 25 minutes or something really ridiculously long. So in the past, we actually, I think this is the Sword of Reiko next to it. I'll get into more of that depth later, but there was some kid running around with the Sword of Reiko, and so we ambushed him with the anvil and tapped him on the sword and then placed the anvil on his toe and trapped him there for like, I think the full 25 minutes until the timer ran out, the anvil lost its power, and then he went back to go to respawn. So a way of trapping another powerful relic with a very powerful relic. But again, sometimes they help you, sometimes they hurt other players, but generally relics are very good things to find and good things to use for your team. Here's some examples of very powerful relics in the past. The Sword of Reiko is perhaps it's one of the oldest relics. It's also one of the most infamous because it's not the dude. This dude's name is Reiko and the sword of Reiko because he's Reiko. But it's a very powerful sword that is able to cut through both armor, which is kind of a normal ability of relic weapons, but it's also able to cut through shields. So not even a shield will protect you from the sword. It's a sword that requires 2 hands to wield because it's more than the one-handed length, but it's a very short vanguard. So the Sword of Reiko going up against like an armor titan like myself, who has a full armor and a huge shield, I'm actually really afraid of this measly little sword because it can just tap me on the shield and I'll die from that. So it's a very powerful weapon to fight me with. However, the Sword of Reiko is really bad against normal people with normal vanguards because it's like a 30-inch blade and the max for vanguard's like 36. And so it's like half a foot shorter than a regular vanguard. This means that a person without any armor and just a regular vanguard can just outmatch someone with Reiko. But Reiko going up against someone in full armor is super powerful because it can nullify their entire advantage against a normal fighter. The Grey Malkin is another one of those things that it's a relic, but it is not a weapon, but it does help your team. The Grey Malkin is this cat here, and if you set it in the trail anywhere around the park, it extends a barrier 50 feet to either side of it, and it permanently, or not permanently, it temporarily blocks off that trail 50 feet to either side of the trail. And 50 feet is just sort of a number. That means you can't just like walk around it into the forest, because trying to walk around 50 feet into the forest means you'll either like hit a body of water and start running into a lake, or you'll get so hopelessly lost that it was literally just faster if you just went all the way around and found another trail. So it's a cat that can be temporarily, I think it's a 5-minute time limit, it can be placed in a trail for 5 minutes, 3 times a game, to block off enemies. So if you have a base and there's like 2 ways into the base, you can place the Malkin on one side and temporarily prevent anyone from double flanking you. So you only have to focus on one direction. So it's a pretty powerful relic. It's also a very iconic one. There are some shirts actually with the Grey Malkin on them. It's a pretty iconic AIC relic. And then we have the double daggers of Dirk the Daring. These are 2 18-inch blades that count as daggers. So like all other relics, they pierce armor, but they can only be wielded together. So you have to sacrifice both hands, obviously. Their special ability is that when holding both of them, it generates armor on your arms. So even if you're not wearing any cardboard, it generates armor up to the shoulders on both arms that cannot be pierced by other daggers. And so they're incredibly powerful fighting daggers, because you can go up against other people with armor and not have, or other people with daggers and not have to worry about it, because their daggers can't even pierce your armor. Though, again, kind of like Ryko, they do get somewhat hard countered by just other people with vanguards, because it's 2 18-inch blades. If you're not comfortable fighting against people with a 36-inch blade, they can just outreach you and tag you somewhere in the torso or legs. But the ability to be protected against other people's daggers is an extremely powerful relic ability. So these are 3 pretty iconic relic power, true relic powers. Now I think, yeah, let's get into heirloom relics. So if those 3 are heirloom relics, or regular relics, heirloom relics are a weaker version of them that instead of being owned by the camp, they are given out to campers to keep and take home, who do something amazing or noteworthy to one day pass on to other campers as sort of an heirloom, hence the name heirloom relic. Essentially, some of the differences from normal relics is that they're a lot weaker, so their powers can't be quite as like game breaking as, wow, it punctures every shield. That's a little bit nuts. But they can have some very fun abilities, sort of like imbuing magic into a regular weapon. Their utilization in games is always a bit of a thing under contention, because they're more than a regular weapon, but they're not quite a relic. And especially, counselors really try hard to balance the possession of relics in the realm, so they'll hide relics very close to a perhaps I shouldn't say that. Relics are somehow found by the losing team to help them along. And heirloom relics, you can't do that, of course, obviously, because the kids come to camp with them. So trying to make sure that the teams are all about of equal strength, or close to equal strength, and one team doesn't just have like 10 heirloom relics is always a bit of a thing. And then, sort of in the same vein, rule standardization, making sure one heirloom relic isn't just ridiculously overpowered, like, oh, anyone I look at in a 10-mile radius dies instantly and has a 4-hour respawn. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. There's no way you can fight with something like that. So the rules have to be agreed upon and understood by everyone when they're wanting to be used in the camp normally. So some of the tribulations with heirloom relics. Any counselor can technically make and give an heirloom relic, but the man, the myth, the legend, Tyler, is really the guy who makes most of them. He, this is an Instagram account, Ponty Python. He makes some beautiful, beautiful swords in exactly the same style of regular relics, but for heirlooms. So they're often 1- or 2-handed swords, or in this case, there was an heirloom relic shield that was given out. They have less strong powers, but they're still very, very mystical, magical weapons that are given to campers and can change the course of a game if you use it properly. But they're just not quite as powerful as regular relics. But the difference is that they're intended to be handed on as an heirloom. That's kind of the reason why they're made. They're given to one camper with the understanding that that camper will give it to another camper eventually. That's the whole point of the Heirloom Relic. So in this sort of idea, I was given an Heirloom Relic actually by Tyler a couple of years ago, and it is called the Tactician Sword. It is a one-handed sword that's all paper mache and polyurethane, so it's water resistant. And it was awarded to me because of my astounding victory at Hard Tactical. I have 3 videos about that. I don't think I have the second half of the week, but essentially what happened at Hard Tactical is my week went really, really, really well. I spent a lot of time beforehand and during planning out all of my moves and like getting the right people into place and doing lots of strategy and making sure everything would work. And because of all the strategy I did, our team won like massively. By day 2, we had such an incredible advantage, and it was cemented by day 3. Like, we won the week by so much, it just wasn't even close. And so because of that strategy and my victory, I was awarded this Heirloom Relic. So what does it do? It currently has no powers. That is primarily because I just haven't thought of them yet. The relic itself was given to me without any powers. It was just given as an award, but it is still an Heirloom Relic. So eventually it will be imbued with some powers if it is ever to be used in a game, which I do intend to do that. I think something cool for relic powers that it could perhaps be imbued with sometime in the future. Most Heirloom Relics have the ability of armor piercing, but in my opinion, that's kind of an overrated ability. I mean, it is very strong, but it's like the only thing people have on their relics, Heirloom Relics, and it's just not very creative. I think we can come up with better stuff. So my example for a Tactician Sword is the whole like idea of the Tactician Sword. It was won through tactics, and so therefore it should aid you in being tactical. So the ability of the Tactician Sword, or one possible ability, would be that when you hold it like this upside down, you cannot fight, you can't use it as an offensive weapon, but because of your ability to strategize, all of the people in your band around you have some buff or some extra power given to them. So whether that's like full armor for a temporary period of time, or armor piercing is again kind of cliche, but some magical ability that the Tactician Sword awards them while you yourself are a non-combatant when you hold it like this. So it's a Heirloom Relic that helps your team through tactics and strategy. I, of course, still have it in my possession, but I do intend to give it away this summer because I'm no longer a child and I'm now a counselor, so I should really try to hand off this Heirloom Relic to someone. So if this year I see anyone who's worthy of the Heirloom Relic, I'll try my hardest to hand it off to someone deserving. So if you see me, try to do something amazing and powerful and tactical, and perhaps I'll be forced to invest in you the power of the Tactician Sword. And that's it for me today. That's a short discussion about relics in general, and specifically my Heirloom Relic, the Tactician Sword. The first house I was ever in was the house of, well, it was called Pendragon at the time, but the house of Drake, or Drake. It is the Wittick house with a sigil of a dragon, and embodies like armor and protection and strength and stuff. And I really like the house, and now they have merch for it. And you can buy all of that merch and merch for all of the other different clans at adventuresinCardboard.com. They also have an Instagram and a YouTube. I have an Instagram as well. It should be in the description. You're on my YouTube, so I don't need to give that to you. But thanks for stopping by and watching another daily upload. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow. Best of luck.